Returning from my business trip much earlier than planned, I intended to give my wife a sweet surprise. Little did I know she would gift me an absolute nightmare. Pushing open the front door, I spotted a strange pair of men's shoes in the rack. Massive size 46, whereas I only wear 42. From the master bedroom echoed the sound of my wife's laughter, accompanied unmistakably by the deep voice of another man. Frozen dead in my tracks, right at the entryway, my brain felt as though someone had forcefully slammed the pause button. In my trembling hands, I still gripped a box of sweet green rice cakes, which I had bought specifically for her at the high-speed rail station, knowing full well how deeply she obsessed over this exact treat. Those cursed shoes sat neatly on the lowest tier of the rack, a pair of dusty gray sneakers, size 46, their rubber soles still stained with fresh traces of mud. Wearing a mere size 42, there was zero possibility. Such a colossal pair of shoes could just magically materialize there. The bedroom door remained tightly shut, yet through the wood drifted muffled fragments of conversation. Lu Ruyin was giggling, a melodic laugh I hadn't heard escape her lips in ages, coquettish, spoiled, and laced with a soft, nasal lilt, followed immediately by the smooth, lazy cadence of a man, though the exact words remained entirely unintelligible. Their casual tone struck me as utterly brazen, utterly relaxed, as if he owned the very place. Clueless to how long I stood paralyzed in that exact spot, perhaps a mere 10 agonizing seconds, or perhaps a full minute until the box of green rice cakes slipped from my numb fingers, though my mind remained frozen. The impact against the floor was far from thunderous, yet inside the dead silence of the foyer, it pierced the air like a gunshot. Hastily dropping down to scoop the box back up, I made a split-second decision, one that even I never expected my shattered self to make, to silently back away and slip out the door, quietly latching it shut just as I found it. No kicking down the door in a blind rage. No screaming bloody murder. No chaotic confrontations. Not because the dark urge wasn't burning inside me, but because my paralyzed brain simply refused to catch up, utterly clueless as to how to even process this horror. Every ounce of strength was brutally drained from my limbs, leaving raw, primitive instinct to forcibly pilot my broken body. Stumbling blindly out into the dim hallway, my legs gave out completely as I slid down the cold wall into a heap. The motion-activated hallway sensor light suddenly clicked off, leaving me collapsed and shivering entirely in the suffocating dark. Unsure how many eons passed before the harsh light flickered back on. It was just someone from upstairs coming down to toss out trash, who threw a curious glance at me as they walked past. Faking the act of tying my shoelace, I waited until they vanished, then pulled my phone out from my pocket and sent Lu Ruyin a carefully crafted text message. There's an unexpected hitch with the client's account down here, meaning I'll be forced to stay another 2 days. I won't be heading back until Friday. My heart hammered furiously like it wanted to shatter my ribs. And once sent, my eyes locked relentlessly onto the screen. It didn't take long before Ruyin replied instantly. All right then, honey. Make sure you take good care of yourself. I stared unblinkingly at that specific word. All right, followed closely by that sickening little exclamation mark. Back in the past, I would have found that endearing. Yet now, it simply made my stomach churn with utter disgust. Dragging myself back up, my legs still trembled beneath me. And, as I finally staggered toward the elevator doors, I cast one last lingering glance back at my own front door, a door sealed tightly shut against the truth. The people locked inside had no clue I had ever stood there. Descending all the way down to the ground floor, I casually walked past the massive garbage bin at the lobby entrance and chucked the box of green rice cakes right inside. I refused to return to that apartment tonight, choosing instead a cheap, run-down motel tucked outside the neighborhood. The absolute cheapest dump I could find, charging a mere 120 yuan a night for a dreary room. Perched rigidly on the edge of the sagging mattress, the tremors finally hit me, starting wildly from my fingertips and vibrating all the way up to my shoulders, not caused by any biting chill, but by an uncontrollable convulsion, a deep, violent shivering originating straight from the marrow of my bones. I desperately gasped for deep breaths, but it was completely useless. My racing mind kept replaying that single haunting image, That pair of dusty gray sneakers, size 46, stained with mud, sitting right inside my shoe rack, pitched directly alongside my own footwear in chilling harmony. Who on earth was that damn man? I began frantically tearing through my memories, scraping together every single male acquaintance connected to Lu Ruyan in any possible way. She worked as a clerk at a women's boutique, surrounded strictly by females, and I had meticulously checked her social feed, finding nothing suspicious since her social circle remained aggressively tiny, consisting solely of coworkers and a handful of mutual friends I already knew. Wait, the number 46 suddenly flared up inside my memory like a lightning bolt. Last month, running into the upstairs neighbor inside the elevator, I remembered noticing his brand new pair of slick basketball shoes and casually blurting out a random question about his shoe size, to which he casually replied size 46, complaining how giant feet were impossible to shop for. Back then, I even exchanged a few polite words with him, agreeing that shoes of that scale were indeed a nightmare to find. Consider my own size, 42, already felt plenty bulky. Zheng Kai from apartment 1602 upstairs, living right in the exact same building block as mine, who operated a local car detailing and care shop. A towering, muscular guy with a notoriously slick and flattering tongue, having moved into the neighborhood over half a year ago, always greeting me with a cheerful brother Lin whenever we crossed paths. I vividly recall the time when I was out and Lu Ruyan claimed the kitchen light bulb had suddenly blown out, and Zheng Kai was the one who kindly dropped by to replace it. There was also another occasion during a torrential downpour, when Lu Ruyan forgot to bring along her umbrella, and Brother Kai drove his car to escort her safely back. At the time, I even smiled and told Lu Ruyan how lucky we were to have a neighbor so helpful, someone who could occasionally lend a hand when things got tough. Lu Ruyan had giggled and agreed wholeheartedly, saying yes, absolutely. Now, reflecting back on those words, how painfully ironic it all felt. Oh, how horribly true it turned out to be. Lying flat on the shabby motel bed, my dead gaze locked onto the ceiling, where the harsh fluorescent bulb flickered in a steady rhythm, beating in exact synchronization with the frantic pounding of my heart. I spent the entire night wide awake, not because sleep refused to come, but because I dared not close my eyes. The moment I shut them, that size 46 shoe flashed behind my eyelids. The following morning, I splashed cold water on my face in the cramped bathroom, staring at a reflection that looked utterly alien and hollow. My eye sockets were bruised and pitch black, my skin drained of all color and cast in a sickly, ashen hue. I had spent the entire night turning every possibility over in my mind. What would actually happen if I burst back home right now to demand answers? Would she cry, beg for mercy, and confess her grave mistake? And then what? Kick up a massive, scorched earth war and rush to divorce? That apartment had been purchased after our marriage, with the hefty down payment funded entirely out of my own pocket, though the mortgage payments made afterward fell under marital property laws, meaning legally binding rights as a married couple meant. An actual divorce would entitle her to walk away with a massive cut of my wealth. The mere thought of that made my chest tighten with a suffocating ache. That apartment spanned a neat 89 square meters. Located in prime eastern real estate, every single brick bought with my sweat. During the renovations, I had sacrificed a whole month of paid leave, slaving away endlessly at the construction site to supervise every single detail, dragging myself across 3 different districts just to find the perfect balcony glass, while the wet and dry partition inside the bathroom was sketched out entirely by my own exhausted hand on a blueprint. Even the quartz stone countertop fitted in our pristine kitchen was something I hunted down across 4 separate building material markets before I finally pinned down the exact shade I desired. This home was entirely my creation. Yet right now, a bastard named Zheng was casually lounging around in my house, utilizing my belongings, sleeping on the very mattress I paid for, and sleeping with my lawfully wedded wife. No, absolutely not. I refuse to let that scum walk away scot-free. I need to keep my composure and play this smart. By Friday, I dragged my suitcase back up to the front entrance, faking the exact persona of someone who had just stepped off the high-speed train. Unlocking the door, I sucked in a massive, nerve-steadying breath, Lu Rian was curled lazily against the living room sofa, her thumb swiping across her phone screen without even bothering to look up. "Oh, you're back? There's leftover rice waiting for you in the pot." I cast a sideways glare directly at the shoe rack, noticing that those damn size 46 sneakers had vanished without a trace, leaving the shelves pristine and orderly as if nothing had ever transpired. I fixed my gaze upon Lu Rian's profile, a face I had cherished and stared at for over 3 long years. Back when we were passionately dating, I truly believed she was the absolute most stunning woman I would ever cross paths with. Yet looking at her right now, it only made my stomach violently churn. "What's wrong? Why are you staring at me like that?" Ruyan finally raised her head with a hint of annoyance. I forced a tight smile and replied, "It's nothing. Just missed you a lot," drawing a soft, sweet curve on her lips, before she promptly returned her gaze to her phone screen, a smug little grin lingering at the corner of her mouth, leaving me clueless whether that smile was intended for me or smuggled away for someone hidden deep inside her digital screen. That entire night, I laid rigidly beside Lu Ruyan, not closing my eyes for even a single second. She slept heavily while her phone rested securely tucked beneath her pillow. Back in the past, she never bothered hiding her phone while sleeping. She used to toss it carelessly across the coffee table, on the dining room surface, or wedged deep between the sofa cushions, never once caring who might catch a glimpse of the screen. Just when did she start playing secrets with her device? I racked my brain for a moment, roughly 2 or 3 months ago. And what else happened around those exact 2 or 3 months? That was precisely when she suddenly took up gym workouts, claiming her boutique coworkers dragged her along so she wouldn't skip, meaning after finishing work, she wouldn't rush straight home anymore. Instead, spending a solid hour sweating it out at the fitness center. At the time, I was actually thrilled for her health, texting gentle reminders urging her to stay safe on the commute, to which she would casually reply with a quick "got it." Wait, around 2 or 3 months ago, she also switched body washes, ditching the cheap supermarket brand we always bought together, to switch over to some niche, luxury brand I had never even heard of, a stark white bottle whose scent left her body smelling sickeningly sweet. When I casually questioned where she managed to score it, she casually brushed it off, claiming she bought it during a promotional sale. Now that I reflect on it, what was the exact name of that brand again? A quick mental check revealed it cost well over 300 yuan a bottle. Normally, she would flinch at spending 50 yuan on a tube of hand cream, complaining it was too pricey. Yet a luxury body wash exceeding 300 yuan? Could she honestly expect me to believe she bought that on a clearance discount? And there was also that incident a month ago when I returned from a business trip and discovered our bed sheets had been swapped out for a completely different set than the ones on the bed right before I left. I knew this woman named Lu Rian inside and out better than anyone. She was the type of person who would let a pile of 8 dishes soak in the sink for 2 full days before lifting a finger, let alone proactively changing the bed sheets. For her to do that on her own accord meant the sun would have to rise from the west. Back then, I even playfully teased her about it, jokingly asking if the sun had somehow risen from the west today, to which she defensively snapped back that she just felt they were dirty. The deeper I dug into my memories, the more terrifying details surfaced, and the more I spiraled, the further sleep slipped from my grasp. At 3 in the morning, I silently slid out of bed and crept into the living room, lingering for a brief moment before swinging open the refrigerator door, revealing 2 ice-cold cans of beer tucked away inside. I never drank beer, and Lu Ruyan didn't touch alcohol either. In the past, I never paid attention to minor anomalies, or rather I didn't notice them. Yet I chose to simply brush them aside, assuming she must have bought them to use as cooking ingredients. Now, glaring at those 2 beer cans, they felt like daggers piercing my eyes. I consciously began observing my surroundings, though outwardly everything seemed normal. I still went to work, traveled for business, and cooked dinner for Lu Ruyan upon returning, listening to her petty complaints just like always, letting them flow in one ear and out the other. However, my focus shifted entirely to the hidden things I had previously never once bothered to care about or question. Take, for instance, the details surrounding the guest slippers kept in the living room. Our household had always kept 2 pairs of guest slippers, one pair size small and another pair size large. with the small pair prepared specifically for female visitors, though they had practically never been worn by anyone. As for the large pair, I finally knelt down to inspect them closely, only to discover the soles were worn completely flat and smooth. That particular pair of slippers had clearly been worn countless times. So just who on earth had been wearing them? The number of male guests who had ever stepped foot inside our home could be counted on one hand. My father had visited us twice, and my old coworker Lou had dropped by just once. That literally summed up the entire list. Yet that heavy level of wear and tear looked nothing like someone only wearing them 3 times. Then there was the toilet seat lid. I had developed a very specific habit. Whenever I finished using the restroom, I always lowered the toilet lid back down. And since Lu Ruyin was a woman, she naturally had no reason to ever flip the toilet seat up. Yet on several occasions when I returned from business trips, I discovered the toilet lid standing upright. Back then, I simply assumed it was just my own absent-mindedness before leaving. Though looking back now, there was no way I could forget every single time. Then there was the bathroom drain grate. While cleaning out the clogged drain, I stumbled upon a cluster of short hair strands trapped inside, slightly shorter than my own hairstyle, yet blatantly not belonging to Lu Ruyin. Lu Ruyin's hair cascaded in long locks past her shoulders. So just whose hair were these strands? And let's not forget that insulated thermos bottle, a company-issued corporate gift stamped with an official logo, which always sat upright on the shelf inside my personal study. Yet one time after coming back from a trip, I found that exact thermos sitting squarely on the living room coffee table, stained with dark tea rings on the inside. I never drank tea, and Lu Ruyin never touched my thermos either, preferring her own ceramic mugs instead. Holding that thermos in my hands that day, I stood frozen for a long time. Some strange man had invaded my home while I was away on business, sliding into my slippers, using my toilet, shedding his filthy hair, inside my private bathroom, and then grabbing my personal thermos to brew his own tea, right inside my very own house, acting as casually as if he owned the bloody place. Everyone, can any of you even fathom what that agonizing feeling was like? It wasn't just blind rage. It was sheer, revolting nausea, the kind of sickening disgust bubbling straight up from the pit of my stomach. Yeah, I forced myself to swallow it down. Why did I hold back? Because relying solely on these fragmented details proved absolutely nothing in the eyes of the law. He could easily argue the slippers were worn by accident, the toilet seat, left up by mistake, the stray hairs dropped by a random plumber, and the water bottle grabbed on a whim out of mere curiosity. I needed indisputable, concrete evidence. That very evening, after Lu Ruyin finished her shower and stepped out to sit on the sofa, dry her hair, I sat right beside her pretending to watch television, while keeping my peripheral vision locked relentlessly onto her. She was furiously typing away messages to someone at a blistering speed, pausing every now and then to flash a secretive smile. Who on earth is that, chatting away with such a radiant grin on your face? The lightning-fast speed at which Lu Ruyin locked her screen was practically faster than my own ability to speak, as she dismissively muttered, "We're just casually discussing some work stuff? Since when did talking about official work make someone beam with such joy? Why are you suddenly being so overbearing and suspicious?" She snapped back defensively before storming off into the bedroom. Back in the past, she would never act like this. Whenever she scrolled through her phone previously, if I leaned in close to catch a glimpse, she wouldn't flinch or shy away at all, and would even proactively thrust funny memes or videos right in front of my face, demanding I look too. Just when did things start shifting like this? It's hard to pinpoint the exact second, because the changes crept in insidiously, piece by agonizing piece, until the terrifying moment you finally realize the entire landscape of your life has already been completely upended. That was the exact moment I made up my mind to install security cameras, a pair of compact household lenses ordered straight off the internet, one angled directly toward the main entrance door, and the other positioned to overlook the entire living room. While I was setting them up, Lu Ruyin happened to be lounging at home, so I casually justified it to her by saying, "Some packages have been getting stolen around the neighborhood lately, and building management strongly recommended setting up a security cam." She cast a lazy glance at the device, before casually replying, "Fine, Just make sure it doesn't face the bedroom. Oh, what a masterclass in playing the innocent victim. I quickly assured her, of course. Not. The living room and front foyer are more than enough coverage. I have zero interest in recording what goes on inside our bedroom, anyway, since all I need to know is who drops by, when they arrive, and exactly how long they stay. Once installation was complete, I ran a quick test on my smartphone, confirming the image feed was crystal clear, and the camera angles captured everything perfectly. A sweeping panoramic view of the living room showcasing the sofa, the coffee table, and the hallway leading straight into the bedroom. Meanwhile, the doorway camera monitored the shoe rack and entryway corridor. And then, the excruciating wait finally began. Waiting being the absolute most agonizing torture a human soul can endure. Should I go on another business trip, or pretend to head out of town? Yet every single time before departing, I would silently chant a grim mantra deep inside my mind, wondering what kind of filth my phone's recording app would capture this time. During my very first business trip, after setting up the system, the cameras ended up recording absolutely nothing out of the ordinary, as Lu Ruyin simply returned home from work as usual, spent her evening watching television and swiping through her phone, and headed off to bed just past 11 o'clock. The exact same thing happened on my second trip, and repeated itself identically on the third time around, until I even found myself beginning to dangerously doubt my own sanity. Could I possibly have been entirely wrong this whole time? Perhaps that pair of shoes from that fateful day was genuinely just what on earth could excuse that? Who in their right mind accidentally leaves their shoes in a stranger's rack? I grit my teeth and waited for my fourth business trip, and that was when it finally went down. Or, to speak with brutal, unvarnished accuracy, during my fourth trip, I didn't actually leave town at all, as I simply phoned my client to reschedule, adjusted our meeting schedule, and checked into a quiet hourly motel tucked right near the office. At precisely 10 in the morning, Lu Ruyin stepped out for work. By 2:10 in the afternoon, Lu Ruyin had already returned. She must have swapped her work shift today, because through the camera feed, inside the sharply focused frame, the very first thing she did upon stepping across the threshold wasn't to change into her indoor house slippers, nor was it to toss down her handbag. Instead, instantly hauling out her phone to rapidly dispatch a text message. At 2:32 in the afternoon, the camera feed flickered. The front door clicked open, and a towering man casually strolled inside. He possessed a strapping build, dressed in casual home shorts and bare feet, or rather, sliding directly into a pair of indoor house slippers. Yes, he literally wore house slippers right out in the open, sliding all the way down from the upper floor straight to the lower floor. So lazy, he couldn't even be bothered to put on actual shoes. Clearly because he was far too familiar with the layout. He had traversed this exact route countless times before. Zheng Kai. My eyes instantly recognized him with crystal clarity. It was undeniably him, the moment he stepped inside the apartment. Lu Ruyin emerged gracefully from the master bedroom, clad in a seductive, spaghetti-strapped nightgown, a scandalous piece of loungewear I had never once laid eyes on before, dyed in a striking shade of pink and cut dangerously short, standing in stark, agonizing contrast to the baggy clothes she always wore whenever she was hanging around me, a completely different, alluring style of sleepwear chosen just for him. She had purposely changed into that outfit purely for his arrival. I watched as the two of them settled down right onto the living room sofa, where Zheng Kai's heavy hand rested with sickening familiarity upon Lu Ruyin's bare shoulder, and Ruyin leaned her entire body trustingly against his chest. An intimate gesture so deeply ingrained and natural. It looked as though it had been rehearsed and repeated hundreds of times. Then the pair stood up together and drifted toward the bedroom corridor. And right as they passed the entryway archway, Lu Ruyin even casually glanced back to click off the living room lights. The live camera feed abruptly plunged into pitch-black darkness, and I slowly lowered my phone, sitting rigid on the edge of the hourly motel's sagging bed, my palms drenched entirely in cold sweat. I flipped my smartphone screen down onto the messy blanket, not because I lacked the courage to keep watching, but because I feared that if I gazed at a single second more, I would instantly leap into my car and tear straight back home on a rampage. Yet this wasn't the right time to burst back in like a madman. It simply wasn't time yet. So, past 8 in the evening, I reopened the app, checking the playback to confirm Zhang Kai had already departed. He had strolled out the main doorway right around 6 o'clock, lingering in the living room for a brief moment before stepping out, where he casually reached for a water bottle sitting on the coffee table and took a long, refreshing gulp of water. My personal thermos, that exact corporate-issued insulated bottle stamped with my company's logo. Once finished, he set it right back down in its original spot, before sliding back into his house slippers, unlocking the door and slipping out into the hallway. The sound of the door closing was exceptionally soft, quiet enough to mimic a sneaky thief breaking into a home, though his arrogant expression bore no resemblance to a thief at all, remaining completely nonchalant and even oozing an infuriating sense of ease, looking just like a guy taking a leisurely evening stroll back home after dinner. I rewound the security footage further back to check the earlier moments, catching the exact point when the two of them sat on the sofa where Zhang Kai murmured something funny, causing Lu Ruyin to double over in laughter, playfully slapping his chest. That intimate posture, that radiant, unrestrained smile. It was worlds apart from the frozen demeanor she displayed around me. She rarely ever smiled when she was by my side, and on the rare occasions she did, it was purely out of obligation, tugging the corners of her mouth upward for a split second before dropping it. Yet whenever she was in the presence of Zhang Kai, her entire aura shifted into something entirely alien. I flipped my phone face down once more, telling myself that was enough. Past 9 o'clock that same night, Lu Ruyin placed a call to my phone, greeting me with, "Honey, when are you actually coming back home?" Her voice dripped with an artificial sweetness so thick it made me sick, the exact kind of affectionate sugarcoating I hadn't heard escape her lips in a very long time. I replied coldly, "The day after tomorrow." "Is something wrong?" She quickly answered, "Oh, nothing. It's just that the kitchen faucet is leaking a bit. Could you take a look when you get back?" "A leaking faucet?" I nearly choked out a bitter, sarcastic laugh right then and there. "Why don't you just ask neighbor Zhang from upstairs to take a look first? Isn't he always super enthusiastic about helping out?" The line on the other end fell dead silent for a full second, before her panicked voice stammered out, "Nah, it's not that urgent. Just wait until you get back, and we'll deal with it then." She quickly piped up before hanging up. To think she still had the nerve to dodge the subject like that, when the affair had literally played out that very afternoon, only to call me up later that evening, and maintain that utterly unbothered, honeyed tone of voice. "Everyone, let me ask you, if you were in my shoes, could you possibly swallow?" That kind of rage, yet I forced myself to hold back, because capturing a single day of footage simply wasn't enough. I needed a mountain of evidence far greater than that. Over the following 2 weeks, I staged 3 more fake business trips, and every single time, Zhang Kai dropped by like clockwork, showing up right on schedule the exact afternoon I supposedly left town, with his arrival time locked into a predictable window of around 2 to 2:30 in the afternoon, gliding straight in with house slippers already on his feet without missing a beat, not even bothering to knock on the front door anymore. Why? Because he possessed a spare set of keys. That's right. No, you all heard that correctly. He actually held a physical key to my own front door. During one particular session, the camera captured the chilling scene crystal clear, before Lu Ruyin had even returned home from work. Zhang Kai casually pulled out a keychain from his pocket, unlocked the door himself, and sauntered straight inside. Once inside, the very first thing he did was head straight to the fridge, grab a cold can of beer, settle down onto the sofa, and flip on the television, propping his feet up while wearing my indoor slippers, watching my TV inside my living room, chugging beer pulled straight from my refrigerator, acting entirely as if he were the true master of the household. And when Lu Ruyin finally arrived home, spotting him lounging on the sofa didn't even faze her, as she simply changed her clothes and walked out as if nothing was amiss, before the two of them immediately entangled in each other's arms. I stared at those recorded video clips, watching them over and over again, not because I enjoyed masochistically torturing my own soul, but because I needed to sear every single microscopic detail into my memory, remembering precisely how many times he wore my slippers, remembering how many times he used my personal cups, and remembering how many times he kicked his feet up onto my living room sofa with total arrogance. Because when the final day of reckoning finally arrived, I was going to settle every single score with them ledger by ledger. As for the passcode, lock on Lu Rian's phone. I already knew she used our anniversary date. A 6-digit combination that hadn't changed once since we started dating. In truth, I had never once snooped through her phone in the past, not purely out of blind trust, but because I simply felt it was totally unnecessary. But now I desperately needed. That very night, waiting until she fell into a deep sleep, I carefully slid her phone out from beneath her pillow, entered the familiar passcode, and unlocked the device. The very first chat thread staring right back at me was labeled Kai, without even bothering to include his surname, listed by just a single name. So intimately close, they didn't even need formal titles. I tapped open their massive, densely packed chat history, starting my review from the most recent messages. Coming over this afternoon? Not today. I have the day off. Good. What time is your old man heading out? He left bright and early. Don't worry about it. I scroll further up. When are you planning to wash my thermos? The last time I brewed tea in it. Well, that's her husband's cup, not mine anyway. Why should I waste my energy stressing over it? Haha, you're something else. What's there to be scared of? That dense idiot is completely oblivious. He wouldn't even notice if it was right under his nose. I continued scrolling. Did you sleep with that old man last night? Take a wild guess. Honestly speaking, absolutely not. Whenever he even tries to touch me, I just fake being exhausted. That's my good girl. You're always the best. My hands instantly began to tremble uncontrollably, not sparked by mere rage, but by an unnatural, biting chill. A freezing cold radiating straight from the center of my heart, sinking frostily down my fingertips as I kept scrolling further. Just how much does your husband actually pull in every month anyway? In a good month, around 20 to 30,000. In a bad month, barely a few thousand. That's about it. What else did you expect? Running around construction sites all day long. How much could he possibly make? Just take a look at his calloused hands, covered in rough patches like a sheet of sandpaper. Then what on earth made you stay with him in the first place? To get my hands on his rundown apartment, obviously. True, though that place itself is actually pretty decent, with the interior layout and custom decor all designed by him personally. Can't deny the guy actually has a decent work ethic, even if his personality is as dull as a brick. I read through every single line of that conversation word for word, every single character feeling like a needle piercing my flesh, not producing a sharp, sudden jolt of pain. At first, I felt nothing, before the warm blood slowly began to seep out of the wound. However, what truly broke me wasn't even those insults. I kept scrolling further up into the archives, unearthing their much older chat logs from months ago, only to discover they were discussing me. Whenever they brought me up, it wasn't just out of casual small talk, instead maliciously conspiring and dissecting me behind my back. Won't your husband end up finding out about this? Not a chance. He's an honest, gullible fool. He would never in a million years check my phone. Well, that's great then. Even if he did find out, there's nothing to fear. What the hell could he possibly do anyway? Threaten to divorce me? As if he'd ever have the balls to actually do it. You sure sound confident about that. I've had him wrapped around my finger for so long. How could I not know what pathetic little tricks he's capable of? Throw a temper tantrum and cry it out for a bit. And in the end, wouldn't he still end up acting obedient? Slowly and soundlessly, I slid her phone back beneath the pillow of Lu Ruyan and stood up to walk out onto the balcony, remaining frozen in place for hours as the residential compound grew completely silent. Streetlights cast twisted tree shadows across the concrete below, until a sudden sound of a door clicking shut drifted down from upstairs. It was apartment 1602, Zheng Kai's place. I slowly tilted my head up to cast a gaze upward, where the light on his balcony still burned brightly. That vile man lived directly above my head, trampling over my dignity day after day, smiling warmly during the daylight hours to call me Brother Lin, only to embrace my wife under the cover of night and whisper sweet filth. I stood anchored to that balcony until 2 in the morning, while Lu Rian slept soundly without waking up even once. There was one final chat exchange remaining, the very last string of messages I happened to stumble upon right before I prepared to exit the chat app. That specific day had apparently fallen on a weekend, when Lu Rian whipped up a home-cooked meal, snapping a picture to send to Zheng Kai with the caption, "I cooked this for you. Why didn't you just invite me down to eat? Are you an idiot? He's home right now. You expect me to cook for him too? Well, do it anyway, otherwise he might start growing suspicious. So does the food you cook for him taste anything like what you cook for me? You're overthinking it. I just boiled a bowl of instant noodles for the old man." Followed immediately by a string of laughing until crying emojis. That exact day, she had genuinely cooked me a bowl of instant noodles, topped with a single fried egg, and I had even turned around to thank her for it. To which she had coldly replied, "Don't mention it." Back then, I naively thought how wonderful it was to have a wife cook me noodles. Though simple, it felt filled with genuine care. Now, the bitter truth hit me like a truck. That exact same meal meant a lavish spread of dishes for him, while reduced to a pathetic bowl of instant noodles for me. And on that exact day, I had felt so deeply blessed, foolishly believing she truly cared about me. Cared for me? Yeah, she sure cared. I desperately needed an accomplice. And not just any ordinary friend. Friends couldn't possibly help me with this mess. I needed someone who was trapped in the exact same living hell. To be brutally specific, I needed Wu Ting, the lawful wife of Zheng Kai, the woman living directly on the floor above mine, the gentle kindergarten teacher, the exhausted mother who spent every single day taking her 2-year-old toddler for a stroll around our apartment complex. But how on earth was I supposed to break the ice? "Hey, sister-in-law, your husband is currently sleeping with my wife." I had mentally rehearsed that exact line dozens of times. Yet no matter how I framed it, it sounded utterly psychotic. Too blunt, and I'd risk terrifying her out of her wits. Too subtle, and she might miss the horrific point entirely. And what if she straight up refused to believe me? Or worse, what if she believed me, but chose to swallow the humiliation in silence? What if she immediately turned around and tipped off Zheng Kai? My entire master plan would be blown, paralyzed by these doubts for 3 agonizing days. Throughout those excruciating 3 days, Lu Ruyin threw violent tantrums at me no less than half a dozen times, bitching that the fresh fruit I bought was rotting, complaining that the dishes I scrubbed were still filthy, and whining that the glare from my phone was disrupting her precious beauty sleep. I swallowed every ounce of rage, quietly absorbing all her toxic venom, apologizing meekly whenever a fake apology was demanded. Lu Ruyin merely rolled her eyes in sheer disgust before turning her back on me. And as I glared at her retreating back, she instantly whipped out her phone and started frantically typing, that same sickeningly sweet grin plastered across her face. I couldn't afford to wait another damn second. Late Saturday afternoon, I staked out the apartment courtyard for over 2 grueling hours, until I finally spotted Wu Ting, completely alone, pushing a baby stroller out for a walk. Zheng Kai was nowhere in sight. The bastard was likely busy at his auto shop. As I closed the distance, my heart hammered wildly against my throat. Seeing me approach, sister-in-law Wu Ting looked visibly startled. "Lin Yuan, is something the matter? Could we chat for a second? I swear it'll only take a few minutes." She closely scrutinized my twisted expression, likely noticing the deathly pale, haggard look on my face. "What's going on?" My lips parted to speak, then snapped shut, the words utterly dying in my throat. Standing face to face with an innocent woman, to break the news that her husband was actively cheating on her. It was an impossible sentence for anyone to spit out, ultimately abandoning any attempt to sugarcoat it with tactful words. I abruptly whipped out my phone and hit play on that specific video clip. Zheng Kai, casually shuffling in his slippers straight down from upstairs right to my front door. Capturing the exact moment, he pulled out his key and unlocked the door, with the timestamp stamped clearly in the corner, 2:10 p.m. Wu Ting stared down at the screen, her gaze locked on it for a solid 10 seconds, without uttering a single sound, before her knuckles turned stark white as she gripped the handle of her baby stroller so hard her fingers practically turned blue. When was this footage recorded? Last Wednesday, around 2:30 in the afternoon. Last Wednesday. She paused for a brief second. That was when I was stuck at the kindergarten. She slowly handed my phone back to me, lowering her head to look at her infant son sitting in the stroller, who was chewing cheerfully on a teething toy, drooling slightly down his bib amidst a long, suffocating silence. I half expected her to break down in tears, or scream out in blind fury. Yet she abruptly lifted her head to meet my gaze. Her eyes bone dry as she asked, "Is there anything else?" I immediately pulled up the screenshots of their chat logs for her to see, swiping through the terrifying images one by one as she read every single word with chilling focus. When she reached the part where Zheng Kai asked, "Won't your husband find out?" the corners of her lips twitched into a bitter, venomous sneer. When she scrolled down to the instant noodles exchange where he mocked my meals, her nose flared slightly as she let out a sharp breath. And when her eyes finally landed on the message where Zheng Kai bragged, "Her figure can't even compare to yours," her hand froze dead in its tracks, staring laser straight into the glowing text for at least 10 agonizing seconds before she silently handed the device back to me. Her facial expression remarkably devoid of shock, though her lips were pressed into a razor-thin, bloodless line. "What are you planning to do about this?" she asked me quietly. "I'm not about to let those bastards get away with this so easily." She echoed those exact words with a haunting flatness, her voice dipping into a freezing, glacial sub-zero tone. "Who said anything about letting them off the hook?" "Istef deeply here. Then let's put our heads together and map out a fitting hell for them." And just like that, two wretched souls utterly betrayed and cuckolded sat side by side on a park bench inside the apartment complex. As the burning sun slowly dipped below the horizon, on the grassy lawn nearby, a few elderly residents were taking a leisurely stroll, while off in the distance, laughing children chased each other in circles, painting the picture of a profoundly ordinary evening twilight. An ordinary scene so painfully ironic it felt like a sick joke. Inside this massive housing complex, everyone else was living out their quiet, mundane lives, unaware that only Wu Ting and I knew the horrifying truth that two households, stacked directly on top of each other between the upper and lower floors, were harboring the most twisted, depraved secrets imaginable. "I've already secured all the surveillance footage," I whispered, along with endless screenshots of their explicit text messages. "Is that enough? If you're only aiming for a basic divorce, that's more than enough. However, I don't just want you to walk away with a simple divorce." Wu Ting looked straight into my eyes, asking, "Then what exactly do you want?" I want to show them both that it wasn't because I was too cowardly to cause a scene, but because I was patiently waiting to strike at the absolute peak moment. Wu Ting fell silent for a brief moment before asking, "I have a question for you. When did you first realize something was wrong?" "Not even a month ago." "A single month?" She gasped. "And for a whole month, you managed to keep your composure without exploding, swallowing all that agony? How else could I survive?" I stood up and gently adjusted the blanket over her sleeping child, while she nodded in grim agreement. "Count me in. I'll coordinate with you every step of the way. Just make sure to call me the moment we make our move. Don't even think about charging in there all by yourself." And just like that, Wu Ting and I mapped out our ultimate retribution plan, which wasn't even all that complicated. We would simply wait for my next scheduled business trip, wait for Zheng Kai to slither down to my apartment like clockwork once again, and right when those two scumbags were locked deep inside my home, Wu Ting and I would simultaneously burst through the front door. Though before that grand finale, we still needed to stockpile undeniable proof, as two occurrences could still be brushed off as flukes, but 5 or 6 times would serve as an airtight mountain of ironclad evidence. When it came time to face the courtroom or negotiate settlement terms down the road, having as much ammo in our hands as possible was critical. Wu Ting looked at me with a tired sigh and asked, "How on earth am I supposed to pretend everything is normal during this waiting period? Just make sure you don't let that bastard catch a single whiff of suspicion. Do you even know what the hardest part is?" She muttered bitterly, lying right next to him at night, listening to his snores, while fighting every instinct to violently kick his worthless ass off the bed. I paused for a moment to process her words, understanding her pain intimately, truly, deeply understanding it, because I was enduring that exact same psychological torture myself. Every single night, lying beside Lu Ruyan, listening to the frantic clicking of her fingers typing messages to her lover, hearing the rhythmic tapping of the keyboard in the dark, and forcing myself not to violently snatch the phone right out of her treacherous hands and smash it to smithereens right across the bedroom floor. And so I staged 2 more fake business trips, carefully checking the camera angles and battery levels, before walking out the door every single time, and returning home to plaster on a fake smile as if nothing was wrong. The video archives piled up higher and higher by the day, until one particular clip captured something that tore my heart out completely. There was one specific part that was utterly heartbreaking. That particular day, Zheng Kai arrived quite early before Lu Ruyan had even returned, casually unlocking the door himself to take a leisurely tour around the living room, before swinging open the refrigerator to snatch a box of fresh strawberries I had bought 2 days prior, and strolling out onto the balcony to light up a cigarette. Right there on my own private balcony, he rudely flicked his burning cigarette ashes directly into the potted pothose plant I had nurtured. A plant that, back when we first moved into this apartment, my mother had personally brought up from her hometown, saying pothose plants were hardy and full of life, and keeping one indoors brought a refreshing touch of green. Yet he used the pot as an ashtray. Once he finished smoking, he extinguished the glowing butt and lazily tossed it straight into a flower pot sitting in the corner of the balcony. An effortless motion so smooth and routine. It was blatantly obvious this wasn't his first time doing it. Back then, I actually had noticed cigarette butts buried in those flower pots, naively assuming they had just drifted down from upper floor balconies, only to realize now they didn't fall from the sky at all. They were brought down right from the floor above by foot. Meanwhile, Lu Ruyan's attitude toward me during this period grew increasingly hostile, not in the form of explosive shouting matches or screaming fits, but rather through, how should I put it, a sophisticated, highly calculated disgust, a quiet contempt bleeding into every single expression and passing word. Whenever I came home exhausted from work, she would shoot me a single glance and wrinkle her nose in distaste. Why are you always covered head to toe in dust? Running around construction sites all day long. Of course I was dusty. Yet she had never once complained about that in the past. Can you please stop wearing these beat-up shoes around everywhere? The leather is literally peeling off at the seams. That pair of shoes was 2 years old and admittedly a bit worn out. But why waste a decent pair of shoes running around a muddy construction site? When you eat, could you possibly stop chewing with your mouth open? Did I actually chew with my mouth open? Come to think of it, maybe I did. Yet she had never once criticized my eating habits before in our lives. I knew why she was acting like this without her even needing to spell it out. Because she had already found someone new to compare me against. Compared to Zheng Kai, every single thing about me was suddenly flawed. Zheng Kai was a smooth talker while I lacked charisma. Zheng Kai dressed sharply while I was constantly caked in dust. Zheng Kai owned his own independent business, while I was merely a salaryman grinding away for a paycheck. Once a person finds someone to serve as a benchmark comparison, every inch of the person standing right in front of them becomes an eyesore. Remember that popular viral quote floating around the internet? If your significant other suddenly starts nitpicking every single flaw you have, there is a massive statistical probability that another option has already appeared in their life to serve as your living benchmark. Well, I had now experienced that brutal reality firsthand. Meanwhile, Wu Ting reached out to me via text message, telling me that Zheng Kai's behavior had undergone a massive transformation. Whereas he used to slouch on the sofa all evening glued to his phone, he had suddenly started obsessing over his personal grooming and appearance, even purchasing a pricey bottle of luxury cologne, spending forever styling his hair in front of the mirror before stepping out, and dropping cash on 2 brand new outfits. I've been married to that man for 4 whole years, and he never put in even a fraction of that kind of effort when he was courting me back then. Wu Ting's voice carried a chilling detachment, completely devoid of emotion. How did you react to that? I asked. I played along and praised him, telling him, "Honey, you're looking awfully handsome lately." And how'd he take it? He grinned like a smug, brainless idiot. She then added one more horrifying detail. Lately, Zheng Kai has started getting up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. A guy who never once woke up after falling asleep now stumbles out of bed 2 or 3 times a night. She had finally paid close attention. It wasn't to relieve himself at all, but rather to lock himself inside the toilet and fire off text messages, closing the door tight before typing away, and then casually creeping back to bed once he hit send. You want to know what the most stomach-churning part is? She whispered. It's the fact that right after finishing his secret texting and crawling back in, he would casually reach over and pull me into a hug. I didn't even know how to react while he was holding me like that. All I wanted to do was vomit right in his face. Right before my final stage business trip, an incident occurred. That very nearly made me snap and blow our cover prematurely. That evening, I returned home from work a bit earlier than usual, busy whipping up dinner inside the kitchen. While Lu Rian sat scrolling through her phone in the living room, I casually tossed out a question asking what she wanted for dinner, receiving absolute silence in return. Lu Rian didn't offer a single peep. I poked my head out from the kitchen doorway, only to catch her staring down at her phone screen with a radiant grin, the exact same affectionate smile she wore when looking at Zheng Kai in the surveillance footage, an identical, sickening mirror image. I called out her name a third time, Lu Rian. She finally snapped out of it, lifting her head to snap, "What is it?" Her facial expression morphing instantly, swapping from sweet infatuation to blistering impatience, switching gears with the speed of flipping a book page. I asked what you wanted to eat tonight. "Whatever is fine. Just make whatever tomato and egg dish you want." "Fine, fine, fine," she muttered, immediately dipping her head back down her phone screen. I stood frozen inside the kitchen, holding a single raw egg in my palm, squeezing it so hard I damn near crushed the shell to pieces, though I ultimately dropped it back into the bowl. It wasn't time yet. The final curtain was almost here. And very soon, my mother was rushed to the hospital suffering from acute gastroenteritis. When she phoned me late in the middle of the night, her voice was already trembling and completely distorted with agony. "My son, my stomach hurts so badly I can't take it anymore." I scrambled into my car in a blind panic to pick her up, rushing her straight to the emergency room at the Central Hospital, checking her in, running tests, and hooking her up to Enfor drip, fretting until past 3 in the morning before her condition finally stabilized. My mother lay pale and ghostly on the hospital bed, her complexion sallow, as the intravenous fluid dripped down drop by agonizing drop. I sat hunched over on a cheap folding chair right beside her, keeping watch. And early the next morning, I placed a call to Lu Rian, catching her up on the terrifying situation. "Is your mom's condition severe?" "She's still hooked up to Enfor drip. The doctor says she has to stay admitted for at least 3 days. So, does that mean you have to run back and forth to the hospital these next few days?" "Yeah, I'll go to work during the day and head over here at night to look after her since my dad's legs aren't great. He can't easily handle going up and down stairs. So I'm the only one who can shoulder this burden." I paused for a brief second, waiting for her to say something like, "Let me come over and lend a hand," or, "Is there anything you need me to pack and send over?" Yet not a single comforting word crossed her lips. Left with no choice, I finally broke the silence. "Hey, could you possibly come down to the hospital to help out tonight? After staying awake all night, I honestly feel like I'm about to collapse." Lu Rian fell dead silent for 2 agonizing seconds before replying. "I still have to go to work tomorrow, you know. How am I supposed to get any sleep at a hospital? That folding chair sounds violently uncomfortable. Can't you just manage for a single night? Why don't you have your dad go? My dad's legs aren't well. You know that. Then why don't you just hire a private nurse? A private nurse costs over 300 yuan a day. We can't afford to waste money like that. It's not like I don't have my own job to worry about." She hesitated for a brief moment before tacking on another excuse. "Besides, you and your mom are always super close anyway. If anyone else tries to take care of her, she won't be happy about it." I didn't bother uttering another syllable. "Fine, whatever, hang up." I gripped my phone so tightly in my palm, the veins across the back of my hand bulging visibly with rage, while my mother stirred weakly from the bed next to me and asked, "Was that Rian?" "Yeah. She's busy with work, so she couldn't make it. Don't worry about it. Let it go. Don't be hard on her. Young people have hectic jobs. You need to treat her well. You hear me?" "Yeah," I whispered, turning my face away. The fluorescent hallway lighting cast an intensely blinding glare. That entire night, I stayed stationed at the hospital until past 3 in the morning when my mother finally drifted off to sleep, her breathing gradually settling into a steady rhythm. Out of sheer habit, I pulled out my phone and fired up the camera app. And the moment the screen lit up, I froze in absolute horror. The living room lights were blazing. Though at 3 in the morning, the living room should have been pitch black. Lu Rian normally made it a point to shut off all the lights and head to bed well before 11. I frantically switched over to the living room camera feed, only to spot 2 figures sprawled across the sofa. Lu Ruyin and Zheng Kai, sitting there watching television together. At 3 o'clock in the morning, while I was trapped at the hospital tending to my sick mother, she was chilling at home watching TV with another man. On top of the coffee table sat 2 empty bowls. And when I zoomed the camera feed in closer, I saw what was inside. Porridge. White rice porridge, the exact batch I had cooked before rushing out this morning. Prepared specifically for my mother, in case she woke up starving in the middle of the night, which was why I had specially whipped up a fresh pot, leaving it tucked inside the rice cooker on the keep warm setting. Before leaving, I had specifically reminded Lu Ruyin about it, asking her to scoop out a bowl and save it, so I could bring it with me to the hospital the next day. She had agreed on the spot, yet now that exact pot of porridge sat decimated on the coffee table, shared across 2 bowls between 2 people. I shut off my phone and sat in dead silence for what felt like an eternity out in the hospital corridor, while a patient in the opposite ward hacked away with a dry cough, and a nurse pushed a clattering medicine cart past my bench. The flickering fluorescent overhead tube hummed a low drone. Everything around me operating with terrifying normalcy, except for the fact that I was completely losing my mind. A grown-ass man, towering and broad-shouldered, huddled and slouched in the darkest corner of the hospital hallway. My jaws clamped together so hard my teeth ground audibly against each other. By 2 o'clock the following afternoon, I finally made it back home, taking advantage of my brief lunch break to swing by and grab some fresh supplies, only to find Lu Ruyin already inside, enjoying her day off rotation from work, sitting comfortably on the sofa with a face mask peeled across her skin, casually streaming some trashy variety show on the TV. Spotting me walk in, she lazily tossed out a question. Is your mom feeling better? Well, as long as she's recovering, that's good. She finished speaking and instantly glued her eyes back to the television screen. As I walked past the living room toward the hallway leading to our bedroom, I happened to glance sideways and caught sight of the TV console shelf. Our wedding portrait of Lu Ruyin and me, which proudly sat displayed right on the TV stand, was visibly crooked. It had originally been positioned perfectly straight. Someone had clearly bumped into it recently. I stepped forward and reached out to straighten the tilted picture frame back into alignment, while Lu Ruyin's voice rang out from the sofa behind me. What on earth are you doing? Is your OCD acting up again? It probably just got knocked slightly out of place while I was cleaning up earlier. Cleaning up? She cleaned the house? Since when did she ever lift a finger to clean anything around here? I didn't utter a single syllable, carefully adjusting the frame until it was dead straight, staring at the 2 people in the photograph, smiling with blinding, radiant happiness. That picture had been shot at a professional studio 2 years ago, an exhausting ordeal that took an entire day to complete, leaving me completely drained and out of breath. Yet Lu Ruyin had remained high-spirited and excited throughout the entire session, constantly swapping into new outfits, changing her hairstyles, dragging the photographer around, and demanding retakes while meticulously adjusting angles over and over again. That exact day, she had looked at me and whispered, "Lin Yuan, we're going to be happy together forever." And I had replied, "We definitely will," genuinely believing every word back then. Now, the people inside the picture frame were still smiling brightly, while the living, breathing humans standing outside the frame had long since rotted away. That evening, before heading back to the hospital to pull another overnight shift, I executed the final preparatory step, retrieving our official marriage certificate, my property ownership deeds, and all my critical personal paperwork, out from the locked drawer hidden deep inside our bedroom, stuffing them securely into a file bag and carrying them down my office, locking them safely away inside my personal workplace desk cabinet. Lu Ruyin would never notice they were missing. She never once rummaged through that particular drawer, just like the fact that she never once paid a shred of attention to anything belonging to me. When I finally arrived back at the hospital ward, my mother's condition had improved dramatically, sitting upright against her pillows as she ate her dinner. The doctor dropped by to say that with one more day of observation, she would finally be cleared for discharge. My mother reached out to grip my hand, whispering, "My boy, you've been working yourself to the bone. Hurry up and go back home. I can take care of myself just fine here. Don't worry about me. Stop staying cooped up at the hospital with me. Go home to your wife instead." She must be so lonely staying all by herself in that big apartment. I offered a grim, hollow smile. Trust me, she definitely isn't lonely, not even for a single second. 3 days after my mother was successfully discharged from the hospital, I packed my bags for another business trip, my final, fateful journey. Before stepping out the door, I made absolute final preparations around the apartment. All important documents had already been safely relocated. The surveillance cameras were fully charged with their angles meticulously calibrated. And I even deliberately left a fresh box of strawberries, sitting right out in the open on the living room coffee table. Fresh strawberries, a sweet treat I knew Zheng Kai loved to gorge on, considering he had devoured my strawberries in the security footage last time. I figured I'd treat him to one final, parting meal on my dime. When the time came to bid Lu Ruyin farewell, she put on a rare, uncharacteristically sweet display of affection, reaching out to gently adjust the collar of my jacket. Drive safe out there, and hurry back home soon. She even pressed a parting kiss against my cheek, her lips icy cold. I smiled bitterly to myself, wondering why she was suddenly acting so enthusiastic. It was simply because my departure meant she finally had the coast completely clear to play. I dragged my suitcase out through the apartment complex gates, drove my car away, and parked it deep inside an underground lot 3 blocks down. Before pulling out my phone to send Wu Ting a swift message, I've hit the road. Wu Ting instantly pinged back. Got it. I've already dropped my kid off at my mother-in-law's place, standing by and locked in for orders. Then came the agonizing countdown. At precisely 2:08 p.m., my phone screen suddenly flashed with a sharp notification. Motion detected in the living room. I tapped the app, pulling up the live feed for the front door camera. The front door clicked open from the outside, and in walked Zheng Kai, looking right at home in his usual loungewear, wearing house slippers and casually swinging a plastic grocery bag in his hand, which appeared to contain a couple of cans of beer. The moment he stepped across the threshold, he slipped effortlessly into those seashell-patterned house slippers, the oversized pair kept exclusively for his personal use. He sauntered straight into the kitchen to dump the beers into the fridge, before spotting the box of strawberries sitting innocently on the coffee table. He plucked one up, tossed it into his mouth, chewed twice, and nodded in approval. Utterly pleased with himself, I stared daggers through the phone screen, whispering, "Go ahead and enjoy your last meal. Don't rush, savor every bite." At 2:15 p.m., Lu Ruyin emerged from the master bedroom, clad in that exact same slinky pink silk nightgown, gliding over to stand right in front of Zheng Kai. The two of them exchanged a few hushed words together, though their voices were too muffled to catch, before they both slipped out of sight into the bedroom. As they went, Lu Ruyin reached back and flicked off the living room lights, plunging the area into shadow. Without a second hesitation, I fired off a text to Wu Ting. They're locked in. Let's make our move. I've already dispatched the message to Wu Ding, and now Wu Ding is finally moving out. I whipped my car around from the parking lot and sped back toward our apartment complex. Every single traffic light along the 15-minute drive feeling agonizingly drawn out, pulling up right beneath our residential building. I found Wu Ting already waiting for me near the lobby entrance, dressed casually in a sleek black t-shirt, her hair tied up in a sharp ponytail with a completely deadpan expression, projecting a terrifying composure that made her look calmer than even I was. We stepped into the elevator together, surrounded by an oppressive silence where neither of us uttered a single word. Reaching the 15th floor, we walked straight up to the door of apartment 1502, my own home. I drew my house key from my pocket, my hand miraculously so steady that it even took me by surprise. I slid the key into the lock, gave a gentle twist, and pushed the door wide open. The hallway lights remained unlit, and the living room was enveloped in the same shadowy gloom. Sitting right there on top of the shoe cabinet, Zheng Kai's pair of sneakers stared back at us in broad, shameless defiance, seeming to mock us as if declaring, "I'm right here in your house. So what are you going to do about it?" Wu Ting and I exchanged a sharp, knowing glance, before stepping inside to find the living room completely empty. The strawberries on the coffee table were half devoured alongside 2 empty beer cans, while the master bedroom door remained tightly shut, muffled sounds echoing from within. I strode directly up to the bedroom door, drew in a deep, lung-filling breath, and violently shoved the door off its latch. Lu Ruyan let out a piercing shriek. A shrill, completely unhinged scream of pure terror, erupting from the sudden, catastrophic jump scare. Zheng Kai's physical reaction was lightning fast by comparison, as he jolted upright out of the bed, almost tripping over his own feet in his panic. For people total, 2 trapped naked on the bed, and 2 standing frozen at the doorway, staring at each other with wide, unblinking eyes. Time itself felt like it completely ground to a halt for roughly 3 agonizing seconds, during which absolute silence reigned while Lu Ruyan's eyes bulged out of their sockets in sheer horror, her jaw hanging slack without a single secondary syllable escaping her lips. The instant comprehension of my presence finally registered in her brain. Her complexion drained into a ghostly, ashen pale in a fraction of a second. Zheng Kai looked even more pathetic and utterly doomed, because his gaze didn't just land on me. It locked straight onto Wu Ting, standing right behind my shoulder, his lawfully wedded wife. His face cycled furiously from flushed red to dead white, and then morphed into a sickly, bruised blue. Within the span of 3 chaotic seconds, he had brilliantly completed a full palette of 3 distinct color transformations. Why you? How? How are you? That stuttering mess of a question could hardly be deciphered as to whether it was directed at me, or frantically aimed at Wu Ting instead. In any case, he failed to finish a single coherent sentence. Wu Ting didn't spare him a single glance, stepping out from directly behind my shoulder, and marching straight up to the edge of the bed. She loomed over Lu Ruyan, looking down from a position of absolute superiority, for roughly 5 suffocating seconds, while Lu Ruyan frantically yanked the quilt upward to wrap herself tightly, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Wu Ting finally broke the silence, her voice carrying no excessive volume. Yet every single word landed crystal clear. That silk nightgown you've got draped over your body right now. He bought it for you with my money, didn't he? Lu Ruyan offered not a peep in response, using the hard-earned cash of this married woman right here to buy your clothes, just so you can parade around in them for him to gawk at. Lu Ruyan remained dead silent, her lips quivering violently. Wu Ting gave a slow, deliberate nod, uttering a single, chilling word, "Fine," that carried more terror than a physical slap across the face, simply because it radiated such absolute, bone-chilling coldness. When that single syllable slipped past Wu Ting's lips, it was completely devoid of any trace of human emotion. No blinding fury. No agenosing sorrow. No frantic, screeching outbursts. It was just a flat, definitive fine, much like a judge verifying a final piece of evidence. And once the verification was locked in, it was finally time to settle the blood debt. Zheng Kai finally snapped out of his paralyzed stupor, scrambling frantically to gather his clothes and get dressed. He fumbled blindly around the bedside table with clumsy, trembling hands, while I sauntered right up to the edge of the bed, where his dress shirt happened to be draped over my chair. I picked it up and tossed it right in his lap, saying, "Put your shirt on." The moment he reached out to snatch the shirt, his hand shook like a leaf, not daring to lift his gaze to meet my eyes. By this point, Lu Ruyan had finally managed to claw back her lost voice. "Lin Yuan, please, let me explain. Take your time." I pulled up a chair and parked myself down comfortably. "Just focus on getting your clothes on first. There's no rush whatsoever. We got all the time in the world today." My voice sounded eerily, unnaturally level, so completely devoid of emotion that even I barely recognized it as my own, as if I were discussing some trivial matter that had zero to do with my own life. Lu Ruyan clutched the duvet frantically to her chest, too terrified to budge an inch. "Will you please step outside? Can you go wait outside first, so I can put my clothes on?" "This is my house," I fired back coldly, "and you're telling me to get out?" Lu Ruyan had nothing left to say. Wu Ting let out a sharp, frigid sneer right beside me. That icy, derisive laugh pierced the air more painfully than anything else. 5 minutes later, all 4 of us sat gathered together in the living room. Lu Ruyan, now dressed in a basic t-shirt and shorts, huddled in one far corner of the sofa, while Zheng Kai sat stranded at the opposite end. A physical distance of over a meter separating the two of them, as neither dared to spare the other a single glance. Wu Ting and I sat directly across from them. The atmosphere plunged into an absolute, suffocating silence, so dead and heavy that you could distinctly hear the low hum of the refrigerator's compressor running in the kitchen. I broke the silence first. When did this all start? When no one answered, I pressed the question again, raising my voice. I'm asking you, when did this start? Zheng Kai kept his head bowed low, refusing to utter a single syllable. Lu Ruyan bit down hard on her lower lip, equally mute. I pulled out my phone and brought up the playback logs from the security camera app, scrolling all the way back to the earliest recorded footage. The very first time Zheng Kai was caught on camera, stepping shamelessly across our threshold. I hit play on a video and cranked up the volume. Zheng Kai jerked his head up to glance at the phone screen, only to quickly bury his face right back down in shame. Meanwhile, Lu Ruyan watched the footage play out, her complexion draining even more ghostly pale. You installed hidden cameras? Yeah, that's right. For over a month now, I replied casually. Just what the hell did you two do inside my home? Every single conversation, every single act, it's all stored right here. I pointed the glowing screen directly at them. Do you want me to queue up every single clip and play it back for you to watch together? Enough is enough. Lu Ruyan suddenly shrieked at the top of her lungs, demanding I turn it off. But I refused to back down, letting the footage keep rolling. Fast-forwarding to the specific segment, where Zheng Kai casually used my personal thermos flask to brew his own tea. I hit pause on the screen and stared straight at Zheng Kai. How was the tea you brewed in my cup? He sat frozen, utterly incapable of squeezing out a single word of defense. I hit play once more, skipping ahead to the part where Zheng Kai stood smoking out on our balcony, leaning over the railing and carelessly ashing his cigarette but straight into my mother's precious potted aloe plant, a cherished plant my mother had personally lugged all the way up from her hometown. Ashing your dirty cigarettes right into her soil. Did you know how disrespectful that was? Zheng Kai's throat twitched slightly, yet he still kept his mouth shut. Wu Ting suddenly surged to her feet, marching right up in front of where Zheng Kai sat, and whipped her hand across his face with a resounding, bone-rattling slap. Zheng Kai's head snapped violently to the side from the crushing impact of the blow. Yet he didn't dare to strike back in retaliation, not even daring to cover his burning cheek, simply keeping his head tilted to the side. Wu Ting shook out her stinging hand and hissed, "This slap was delivered on behalf of my young son, the very boy who used to look up to you and call you daddy." Zheng Kai's eyes flared bloodshot red. Whether from the agonizing sting of the blow or sheer humiliation was impossible to tell. I gazed down at him with an absolute, bottomless void of sympathy, knowing full well that the events to follow would turn out far more dramatic and explosive than I could have ever imagined, because those two wretched cowards immediately turned on each other like rabid dogs. The first one to crack and start pointing fingers was Zheng Kai, who likely realized things had deteriorated to a point where complete ruin was inevitable, leaving him no choice left. He frantically began shoving the entirety of the blame onto Lu Ruyan. It was all her. She was the one who initiated every single time, whenever you were away on business trips. She was the one texting me and demanding I come right down. Lu Ruyan jolted straight up out of her seat, shrieking, "You're lying your ass off?" Lying? Go ahead and check your own phone records then. Who was the one texting first? Who kept begging me to hurry down here? I saved screenshots of every single message. Lu Ruyan's face flushed a furious, boiling crimson, not from an ounce of bashful embarrassment, but rather the blistering, frantic flush of getting caught completely red-handed. And you have the absolute audacity to pin this on me? You're the one who told me your relationship with your wife was completely dead. You swore up and down that you were going to divorce her. The moment those words dropped, Wu Ting's head snapped around, shooting a lethal, razor-sharp glare straight at Zheng Kai. Zvenki panisked instantly frantically bathratking. I said I wanted a divorce? When the hell did I ever say that? Stop vomiting filth and framing me. You didn't. Just the other night you told me that once the timing was right, you'd rip the Band-Aid off and dump her. I was just talking out of my ass. It was just pillow talk. Talking out of your ass? Why don't you talk out of your ass and go drop dead instead? Man, this was getting hilariously twisted. Just listen to how pathetic this sounds. Two shameless cheaters, right in front of their respective spouses, utterly tearing each other's masks off to wash their dirty linen in public. I sat back comfortably in my seat and watched the circus unfold. And honestly, it felt ridiculously satisfying. And Wu Ting wasn't even close to finished yet. So I just let the two treacherous rats scream and claw at each other. Amidst their endless bickering, Lu Ruyan suddenly dropped an absolute bombshell. Don't act all innocent. You weren't just generous with me, either. What about when you secretly had a duplicate key made for my apartment? You think I'm completely oblivious to your little games? Go on, tell them how many copies you secretly made. Wait, he actually had a spare key made for himself, too. Not only did she keep letting him in, but he literally went out of his way to forge an extra key. Back when I was reviewing the security footage, I had occasionally spotted him casually pulling out a key to unlock the door, though I had always naively assumed that Lu Ruyan must have simply handed over her own personal backup key to him. Turns out, the bastard went behind my back and got a duplicate made himself. Zheng Kai's face instantly warped in panic. What duplicate key? Stop spouting absolute nonsense. Are you seriously still trying to play dumb? You got that key duplicated and stashed it right inside your car. Tucked away inside the glove compartment on the passenger side, didn't you? I saw it with my own two eyes. The moment Wu Ting heard that damning detail, she didn't waste another breath, instantly surging to her feet to storm out. Zheng Kai panicked, losing his mind completely. Where the hell do you think you're going? What do you think? To go check the glove compartment of your car, of course. Don't go out there. That has nothing to do with you. Wu Ting didn't even bother looking back as she strode straight out the front door. Zheng Kai made a frantic lunge to chase after her, only for me to step forward and block his path cold. Sit your ass back down. He glanced frantically between me and the open doorway. Before sinking back down, the living room plunged into a dead, suffocating silence for roughly 5 minutes, during which not a single soul dared to speak a word while Lu Ruyan curled up tightly into a shivering ball on the sofa, desperately gnawing on her fingernails. Zheng Kai kept his head glued to the floor, his hands locked tightly together in a nervous knot. Meanwhile, I sat comfortably cross-legged on the chair, my heartbeat completely steady and calm. 5 minutes later, Wu Ting walked back through the door, clutching a shiny silver key in the palm of her hand, complete with a small keyring attachment, shaped like a tiny little house. The moment I laid eyes on that keychain, instant recognition hit me. We had bought those matching trinkets on the exact day we registered our marriage, purchased from a small novelty shop right outside the gates of the Civil Affairs Bureau. A pair of identical keychains, one for each of us. Lu Ruyan's keychain had always hung proudly from her primary set of keys, while mine was designated for my personal spare key set, which usually stayed tucked safely inside the storage drawer by the entryway. I had always assumed it was still sitting right there where it belonged, yet now it was resting squarely in the palm of Wu Ting's hand, retrieved straight from the stash in Zheng Kai's car. Wu Ting marched right up to stand directly in front of Zheng Kai, holding the key up in his face. Would you like to try it out and see if it unlocks this front door? Zheng Kai sat completely frozen, utterly incapable of squeezing out a single word. Wu Ting tossed the key onto the coffee table with a sharp, echoing clatter. Go figure, forging a key to break into your neighbor's home, so you could prance around in slippers and act like you own the place every single day. Did you really trick yourself into thinking you were the master of this household, you pathetic leech? Zheng Kai's face morphed into an unidentifiable, sickly shade of mottled gray. I turned my gaze away from him and fixed it straight on Lu Ruyan. Got any other dirty little secrets? You better spit them out right now, while we're airing it all out. Lu Ruyan clamped her mouth shut, refusing to utter a peep. Not talking, huh? I unlocked my phone once more, swiping straight to a series of archived chat screenshots. Do I need to read them aloud to help jog your failing memory? I didn't bother reciting every single paragraph word for word. Instead, I deliberately picked out 3 specific sentences. Sentence number 1. Who gives a crap about that loser's rundown apartment anyway? Sentence number 2. Just throw together some instant noodles to feed him and get it over with. And sentence number 3. I know all too well what kind of pathetic skills that good-for-nothing has. In the end, doesn't he still crawl back and obey me like a good little dog? With each sentence I read out loud, I paused deliberately for a moment, lifting my eyes to study Lu Ruyan's expression. When the first sentence echoed through the room, she bit down hard on her lip. When the second sentence dropped, She whipped her head away, refusing to meet my gaze. And when the third sentence finally hit the air, hot tears spilled over and streamed down her cheeks. Whether she was crying out of sheer humiliation, or out of the bitter terror of getting caught red-handed, or driven by some other twisted emotion entirely, it didn't matter anymore. Every single tear she shed held zero emotional weight or destructive power over me anymore. For a fleeting second, I had foolishly assumed she might actually own up to her mistakes, or at least put on a convincing facade of remorse, but I was dead wrong. She aggressively wiped the moisture from her face, before glaring straight back at me, her expression instantly morphing from a flicker of guilt into, how should I put it, a toxic cocktail of righteous anger, wounded pride, and sheer indignation, resembling a defiant student caught red-handed cheating on an exam by a teacher, who not only refuses to admit fault, instead throwing a tantrum because the teacher dared to peek inside their school bag. Lin Yuan, you sneaked behind my back to install hidden cameras. You secretly snooped through my private messages. Do you have any idea that what you're doing is a massive violation of my personal privacy? I burst out laughing, a genuine, unrestrained laugh. Not a bitter chuckle born of sorrow, but a laugh driven by sheer disbelief at her absolute absurdity. You're standing inside my house, spreading your legs for another man in my bed, and you actually have the gall to stand there lecturing me about privacy? Did you ever once stop to think about why it ever came to this? You were never even home. You were always away. Did you ever give a single damn about me? Did you ever once care about my feelings or what I wanted? She surged abruptly to her feet, her voice escalating into a shrill, hysterical pitch. When I was stuck sitting all alone at home, where the hell were you? Running yourself ragged out there at the construction sites day in and day out. How many times do you think I told you? I didn't want to be left all by myself. Did you ever listen? You're the one who pushed me away in the first place. You were never by my side when I needed you. You never bothered to comfort me. Aside from that run-down piece of trash house, what the hell else do you even know how to do? If you had actually satisfied me in every single way possible, do you really think I would have ever gone out looking for someone else? Everyone, please listen closely and wrap your heads around what she's actually spewing right now. She gets caught red-handed cheating on her husband right in his own bed, and her immediate, knee-jerk reaction is to point the finger and blame me. Blaming me for not spending enough time by her side. Blaming me for failing to shower her with constant attention. Blaming me for not keeping her sexually satisfied. As if all of this filthy betrayal was somehow forced upon her by my own hands. As if her unapologetic infidelity was somehow my ultimate responsibility. Tell me, folks, what kind of twisted mental gymnastics do you even call this? Miraculously, I didn't even lose my temper. I honestly thought I was going to snap. But at that exact defining moment, I felt an eerie, profound serenity. So terrifyingly calm that it felt more centered than my usual self. You know what, Lu Rian? She blinked, caught entirely off guard. You're actually right. I really, truly did have a massive problem. Her expression froze up even further in absolute bewilderment, clearly never expecting me to roll over and agree with her like that. And the biggest, most catastrophic problem of my entire life was marrying you. Lu Rian's face instantly went completely rigid, her jaw hanging slack as not a single secondary syllable could claw its way past her lips. Starting from today onward, I'm going to fix that exact problem once and for all. I stood up from my chair and strode straight toward the entryway, reaching down below the shoe rack to snatch up Zheng Kai's pair of sneakers, before walking right over to the open window. I threw the window wide and hurled them straight out into the open air from the 15th floor. The shoes spun wildly in erratic circles through the empty sky, before plummeting down to crash into the grassy lawn far below the building. I went ahead and took care of your shoes for you. Now you can pack up and get the hell out. I stared dead at Zheng Kai, while he glanced frantically between Wu Ting and me, before shakily rising to his feet barefoot, looking for all the world like a beaten cur whose tail had just been stepped on hard, shuffling out of my apartment to pace the hallway floor with bare feet. To tell you the absolute truth, that pathetic spectacle wasn't particularly majestic or cool to look at, but damn it, it felt insanely, overwhelmingly satisfying. You thought things were finally over just like that? Hell no, we aren't even close to being done yet. This was only the bloody beginning. That very same night, I had the front door lock completely replaced, dialing up a professional locksmith, who showed up on my doorstep within half an hour, and finished swapping out the cylinder an hour later. Now, I was the sole keeper of the keys. When Lu Ruyan packed up her things to leave, I didn't lift a finger to stop her as she gathered a few changes of clothes, stuffing them hastily into a duffel bag, refusing to spare me a single parting glance from start to finish. As she reached the doorway, she paused to hurl one final threat over her shoulder. You're going to live to regret this. Every single discarded cheater always deludes themselves into thinking the other person will regret it. I slammed that newly locked door shut with a heavy thud, the crisp click of the new deadbolt sounding like sweet music to my ears. Meanwhile, Wu Ting handled things with a level of ruthlessness that made my approach look tame. That exact same day, she packed up all her belongings upon returning home, and took her son straight back to stay at her parents' house. Zheng Kai scrambled frantically in desperate pursuit, chasing her all the way to the elevator doors, only for her to turn around and snap icily. Don't you dare follow me another step. If you take one more step behind me, I'm calling the cops right now, and filing a domestic violence report against you. That immediate threat froze Zheng Kai dead in his tracks, terrified to move an inch. It wasn't even about losing face anymore. He was deathly afraid of the police getting involved. By the following morning, the neighborhood residential group chat had completely exploded, with over 300 active members in the chat. Someone suddenly dropped a bombshell image into the feed, a crystal-clear screenshot pulled straight from a security surveillance camera, showing Zheng Kai wearing slippers while lugging a six-pack of beer, casually unlocking and walking right into apartment 1502. The timestamp burned into the corner of the frame was painfully obvious. 2:32 p.m. Attached right beneath the image was a pointed little caption. May I ask what our dear neighbor from apartment 1602 over here was doing waltzing over into apartment 1502 in the middle of the afternoon? If I recall correctly, the male homeowner of 1502 was out of town on business today, right? Who leaked the photo? I haven't the faintest idea, though I can promise you it definitely wasn't me. Seriously, it wasn't me. All right, fine, maybe it actually was me, except I used a burner alt account so nobody could ever trace it back to my name. The comments section went absolute thermonuclear within seconds. Wait a minute, isn't that the guy who runs the bike shop up on floor 16? What the hell is he doing sneaking into someone else's apartment on floor 15? Hey, isn't that the house belonging to the guy who's always away on business trips? Holy crap, isn't his wife supposed to be home alone right now? Bro didn't even bother changing out his house slippers to go visit. Well, damn. Sounds like those two neighbors got real cozy real fast, huh? Turns out living right above and below each other makes hooking up awfully convenient, doesn't it? Man, I remember back in the day, old man Zheng even volunteered to help fix people's plumbing. Turns out the only pipe that guy was really fixing wasn't made of copper. That final punchline in the comment thread left me laughing so hard I nearly choked to death. Lu Ruyan wasn't even added to that neighborhood group chat. But honestly, she didn't even need to be a member of the group to find out. The sheer speed at which gossip spreads across a residential complex travels faster than the actual speed of light itself, because within a span of 3 hours, at least 4 different neighbors had used various private channels to relay every juicy detail straight to Lu Ruyan's ears. She frantically started calling my phone, which I flat out ignored. And when she tried texting me, I blocked her number entirely, so she literally sprinted back home, standing directly outside my apartment door to hammer on the doorbell. Nonstop for a full 5 minutes straight. I glanced through the peephole to catch a glimpse, and her makeup was smeared and streaked everywhere down her face. Her lipstick smudged all the way across her chin, and her hair tangled into a wild bird's nest. A far cry from the seductive, dolled-up image of her wearing a silk nightgown and acting all coy with Zheng Kai in the surveillance footage. When I refused to open the door, she started pounding on the wood. Lin Yuan, open this damn door right now. Open up. By what right do you have to post those things inside the neighborhood chat? Do you have any idea that the whole world is watching me? The door of the neighbor directly beside my apartment cracked open just a tiny sliver, as a neighbor peeked their head out for a split second before hastily retracting it. The door across the hall swung open too, watched the scene unfold for a few seconds, and then clicked shut once more. Not a single person stepped forward to intervene, and not a single soul lifted a finger to help her. Lu Ruyin threw a pathetic tantrum, pounding on the door for roughly 10 minutes before collapsing to sit right there on the cold hallway floor, weeping so hysterically that the hallway's voice-activated light sensor kept clicking off, then flashing back on, then turning right off again. Eventually, she picked herself up and slunk away in defeat. Meanwhile, over on Zheng Kai's end, things weren't looking any better for him either. The very moment Wu Ting arrived back at her parents' house, her absolute priority was to spill every single harrowing detail to her two younger brothers. Wu Ting's two brothers, one who made a living driving heavy cargo trucks, and another working in interior renovation, were neither of them the mild-mannered, peaceful type. By the afternoon of the following day, the pair of them rolled up in a massive cargo van, straight to Zheng Kai's automotive detailing shop. They didn't resort to a brutal beatdown, and they didn't even lay a single finger on the guy. Yet what those two brothers pulled off was far more devastating than a physical beatdown. They stationed themselves directly in front of the shop entrance, and every single time a customer pulled up, they greeted them with wide, beaming smiles. "Hey there, chief car owner. Did you happen to know?" The owner of this shop likes to sleep around with other people's wives, specifically the wife of a neighbor living right downstairs from his own home. That customer would sit frozen behind the steering wheel in sheer bewilderment. "Hey, if you don't mind, feel free to go ahead and get your car washed. We're just dropping a friendly public announcement for your awareness." The driver would stare awkwardly between the two brothers, glance inside the shop, and then immediately slam on the gas and drive away. When the second customer rolled up, "Greetings, driver sir. Let me fill you in on a fascinating little piece of news today." Then the third customer pulled into the lot, followed by the fourth, until no explanation was even necessary anymore. The moment a customer's car approached the storefront, they'd spot those two burly enforcers standing guard and U-turn away on the spot. In the span of a single afternoon, over a dozen waiting cars completely vanished. Zheng Kai, trapped inside the shop, was pacing back and forth like an ant trapped on a scorching hot skillet, before storming outside to confront the two men. "What the hell do you bastards think you're doing right outside my shop? Do you dare me to call the cops right now?" Wu Ting's older brother laughed right in his face. "Go ahead, call him, and while you're busy explaining things to the police officers, be sure to justify why the hell you had a duplicate key to your neighbor's apartment." Zheng Kai choked instantly, completely unable to squeeze out a single syllable of defense. Zheng Kai choked instantly, completely unable to squeeze out a single syllable in response. Wu Ting's younger brother twisted the knife even further. "Oh, brother-in-law. My bad, ex-brother-in-law. Are you even planning on opening this shop of yours tomorrow? Because don't worry, we'll be right back here bright and early." Zheng Kai's face turned a violent, sickly shade of emerald green with suppressed rage. He didn't dare to throw a single punch. It was a 2-on-1 fight. He had zero chance of winning, and striking back would instantly land him an aggravated assault charge. While doing nothing meant he could only stand there helplessly and watch every single client get actively chased away one by one. That very evening, he bombarded Wu Ting's phone with 17 desperate calls, not a single one of which Wu Ting bothered to pick up. When the 18th call rang through, Wu Ting finally tapped answer, dropped exactly one sentence, and hung up. "My lawyer will be seeing you tomorrow," before cutting the line. Meanwhile, over on Lu Ruyin's end, things were even more chaotic because her mother had just arrived in town. She hadn't come to apologize or make amends, but rather to throw a screaming fit and demand justice. Lu Ruyin's mother was well past 50 years old, sporting a tight, wild mane of permed, curly hair, and possessed a piercingly shrill, ear-splitting voice. She planted herself firmly right outside my front door, and because I had changed the locks, she had no way to force her way inside. So she shrieked through the wooden barrier right at me. "Little Lin, open the damn door. Let your auntie talk to you for a moment." I went ahead and cracked the door open to let her step inside. Once she walked in, her eyes darted all around to scrutinize every corner of the apartment, a place she had visited countless times before, always showering the interior design with endless praise during every single past visit. Today, however, there were no compliments to be found. She sank down onto the sofa, instantly striking an elder's lecturing posture. "Listen here, little Lin. Ruyin has already explained everything about this incident to me. Now, it's true that the girl messed up big time. Not a bad opening statement. I'll give her that. though I knew damn well a hypocritical plot twist was waiting right around the corner. But hey, young people are bound to make mistakes. Stumbling and falling into a few errors along the way is completely normal. You're a grown man, a true gentleman with an open heart, so you need to be much more broad-minded about all this. When two people are married and living under the same roof, how can you possibly avoid a few bumps and friction? I stared straight at her, without uttering a single word. Just look at you two. You've been married for over 2 years now, and there's undoubtedly a solid foundation of real affection between you. To throw all that away and demand a divorce over a minor hiccup like this? It's simply not worth it. A minor hiccup like this? Her precious daughter was literally caught right here inside my home, spreading her legs for the next-door neighbor, and she has the audacity to call that a minor hiccup. I still remained entirely silent. When she saw that I refused to respond, she immediately shifted tactics. Little Lynn, let me be completely honest with you. For the past few days, Rian has been crying her eyes out until they're swollen shut. The poor girl genuinely knows she messed up. So won't you please find it in your heart to forgive her just this once? Auntie, you want me to forgive her? Yes, exactly. I picked up my phone from the coffee table, swiped open the photo and video album, and pulled up a specific surveillance clip. The one showing Lu Ruyin and Zheng Kai kicking back in my living room, shamelessly gorging on the meal I had meticulously prepared for my own mother. Why don't you take a good, long look at this first, Mother Lu? She took the phone and stared at the screen for roughly 30 seconds. Her facial expression morphing from an eager, pleading look into sheer mortification, and from mortification straight into a sickly, ashen green. She handed the phone back to me slowly, sat in dead silence for an eternity, and finally muttered just one sentence. A statement that I will genuinely never forget for the rest of my life. So, how are we going to split up this apartment? I stared right in her eyes for 3 full seconds. Auntie, when your precious daughter was lying in another man's bed, why the hell didn't you think to ask that question? Her jaw worked frantically, but not a single sound managed to escape her lips. She got up and stomped toward the door, only to pause and look back one final time. Can't you at least give her a slightly larger share of the settlement? Her life going forward isn't going to be easy at all. I slammed the front door shut right in her face. Everything that followed after that was remarkably straightforward. I consulted a professional lawyer, and the moment all the digital evidence was laid out, the attorney flipped through the files and gave me a definitive verdict. It's more than enough. This is a guaranteed win. The proof of infidelity within the marriage was airtight down to the last detail. And since she was deemed the faulting party, the apartment was legally awarded entirely to me. Lu Rian was only entitled to a tiny fraction of our shared savings, essentially walking away from the marriage completely empty-handed. Throughout the entire legal proceedings, she didn't put up much of a fight or argue at all, probably realizing she didn't have a single trump card left in her hand. On the day she signed the papers, she wore a dark hoodie, pulling the drawstrings tight and keeping her head bowed agonizingly low. Once her signature was dry, she stood up and lingered by the door for a few seconds. And for a second, I thought she was going to spit out some final parting words. Yet she didn't utter a single syllable before turning around and walking away for good. Over on Wu Ting's side, her divorce had also been successfully settled. The court ruled in favor of a divorce and granted full custody of the child to Wu Ting, with Zheng Kai ordered to cough up 4,000 yuan every single month in child support. Ever since his car shop took that massive PR hit, he had lost well over half of his steady customer base. Combined with the hefty asset division mandated by the divorce, his business cash flow instantly shattered, leaving him struggling to stay afloat. In less than 2 months, he was forced to transfer and sell off his entire shop, and word on the street was that the transfer price was nearly 1/3 lower than what he had originally paid to acquire it. The most hilarious part of it all, however, was what I heard later on through neighborhood gossip. Lu Ruyin and Zheng Kai actually ended up crawling back to each other and shacking up, figuring they were both already branded with a ruined reputation anyway. They apparently decided to just lump their trash together and live as a couple. Except those two toxic parasites barely lasted 3 months living together, before breaking up in a fiery disaster. Want to know why? Because Lu Rian eventually discovered that Zheng Kai hadn't just been cheating with her alone all this time. back when he was still running his auto detailing shop. There had been a regular female customer in her early 30s who drove a luxury SUV and conveniently kept coming back to his shop to get her car washed on the regular, and washing and scrubbing until they washed their way right into completely different places. When Lu Ruyan stumbled upon their secret chat logs, all hell broke loose instantly. Didn't you tell me I was the only one in your heart? What kind of blind eyes were you using when you heard me say a lie like that? The two of them screamed and clawed at each other's throats for 3 straight days and nights, until Lu Ruyan finally packed her bags and stormed out first. Before leaving, she took a pair of scissors and shredded to pieces a brand new jacket Zheng Kai had recently bought for himself. Zheng Kai, burning with blinding rage, popped onto social media to post a pathetic status update on his timeline. The single biggest regret of my entire existence is ever crossing paths with such ungrateful, backstabbing scumbags. The comment section beneath his post was flooded with ruthless sarcasm, because absolutely everyone on his friends list knew precisely who he was whining about and exactly what scummy things he had pulled. After all that chaos, I settled into living completely alone inside this 89 square meter home. I replaced the old living room sofa because I refused to sit on something tainted anymore, swapped out every single bedsheet and blanket for fresh ones, and threw away the old slippers, keeping only 2 pairs, both handmade by my mother. The money tree plant out on the balcony was repotted with rich, fresh soil. When my mother came over to help me tidy up the place, she asked me with a soft sigh, "Why did things end up like this all alone? You two divorced. Why couldn't you make it work out to the end?" My mother fell silent for a long moment before muttering, "It was her fault for failing you." I didn't offer a response. Mom let out a long breath. I honestly always knew she wasn't reliable, but back then you were so deeply in love, so it was hard for me to speak my mind. I smiled faintly. "It's fine, Mom. Everything's in the past now. As for the future, we'll just figure out the future when it gets here." My mother let out one final sigh, just as I was hanging up a crisp, brand new set of window curtains. Right before she headed out the door, she reached in her tote bag and pulled out a fresh pot of devil's ivy. "Put this one out on the balcony, son. It's super easy to keep alive. And please, stop eating takeout food all the time. I crammed some homemade meals into your freezer. Just pop them in the microwave to heat them up. Okay, my boy. If you ever need anything at all, just pick up the phone and call your mother. You hear?" After she finally left, I stood out on the quiet balcony for a brief moment, watching the street lamps across the neighborhood flicker on one by one. Downstairs, someone was walking their dog, while far off in the distance, the faint sound of a child calling out for their mom echoed through the air. It was just an ordinary, peaceful evening at dusk, eerily reminiscent of that exact evening when I first walked over to Wu Ting's place. Sitting together on that bench, though everything had changed now, whatever was meant to rot and break had finally shattered, and whatever trash was meant to be discarded had finally been thrown out. I picked up my smartphone, glancing down to see that Lu Ruyan was still securely locked in my blocked contacts list. I unblocked her account for just a brief second, sent her a crisp 2-word message saying "serves you right," and slammed the block button right back down. I set my phone down and pulled open the refrigerator door, taking out the homemade meal my mother had lovingly prepped for me, pop it into the microwave to heat it up, and sat all by myself on my brand new sofa to enjoy my dinner. The feeling was absolutely phenomenal.